I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to note for the record that Mr. Chittick is not here. First thing on the agenda, I promised Dina that I would give her first shot so she can get back, and she's very dedicated and hardworking, so. Dina.
It's more of I'm asking for your blessing. I do have control over the GIS funds, but I don't want to be reckless. What I'm proposing, and I've got a couple of screenshots, we did ask in the bid package if they would submit pricing for better resolution, and they did. We were expecting a bid of around $60,000. It came in right at $50,000, so we had $10,000 already prepared to use. It's gonna, his proposal I've got listed on the front, $19,000 to fly at a lower level over Paris and Christmas. But for an additional $4,000 to make it $23,000, he would also add Kansas, Hume, and he originally said for Million, but I asked him for Brockton. It has more parcels. So an additional 23, so we're looking at now closer to 73,000. But this is why. The first page, you got a side-by-side of the difference between a 6-inch resolution and a 3-inch. Then the next two, the first page is a 6-inch, the second page is a 3-inch. And then the final, I showed you of what we deal with. The parcel that's marked 012 is very fuzzy. If the assessor said that's fenced in, they have dogs, can you measure the new garage, the new deck? You can see how fuzzy it is, and it's very hard to tell what's there. But these other examples show you what the difference between a 6-inch and 3-inch resolution would do for us.
She talked to me about it, and I thought, you know, there's no issue actually doing it because of the way the bids came in, and you've already approved the one bid. So we just wanted
for her would be
right, and we just thought it just to be totally open and.
Right, I would just prefer that you be aware of it, and like I said, I'm asking for your blessing.
Which one would you prefer?
Oh, definitely the 3-inch resolution, definitely. In today's times, we're seeing more and more gated properties. We're seeing more and more dogs fenced in where we can't get back to. I know it sounds mean that we can't see, so we want to see it from the air, but if I have to tell someone we didn't pick up that new house because we can't see it, that's not a reason. So if we have capability to be able to measure or see things from the air that we can't physically view, we need to be able to do it correctly. And again, if you're looking at some of these fuzzier pictures, that's hard to do sometimes.
This is entirely out of the GIS.
Right.
We are.
No tax dollars, it's out of GIS fund. Last time I asked Dawn what our total was, I think it was this summer, it was $125,008. So it just comes out of that. That money can only be used for GIS purposes, only. So I can't use it for anything else. And since we handled the GIS, I have the only GIS editor license.
And the flyover happens every 2 to 3 years?
Well, every 4, but we're looking at backing that up to every 3 because we found now that we're flying every 4 that the current group of townships that's under reassessment is getting the new flight, whereas Paris, who is the final, they always have the 3-year-old flights by the time we get to them. So if we do every 3 years, that would bump the Quad Township getting the newer flights and rotate that out a little better.
Questions, guys? And Allison?
Don't fly over my house anymore.
Just don't sunbathe nude when they do.
No, that's
I
not
might
something
pick
you
that
want to see. Go ahead. You want to keep your camera? Just try it. You can hit it anyway.
So you do all of Edgar County's towns, cities,
Yes.
villages every 3 years with a 3-inch is your plan?
Well, that's at this time around. We'll see how that works, if we feel like it's worth money. We've never had that level of accuracy flights before.
So like you said, you list your villages, so then would the other villages get picked up somewhere along the way?
Well, they fly the entire county. Just when they fly over these particular villages, the aircraft will be at a lower level so they can get a better resolution.
So like Vermilion and what, Redmond?
Right.
Would stay at a 6?
Right. Right, and the only reason we chose those 5 is those are the highest parcel counts,
We
highest.
could include Quaker if you wanted.
Well, I don't know that you could figure out what was Illinois and what was Indiana.
I'm just teasing.
A lot of it depends on the weather. I mean,
This is
they can
how
only
they
fly
assess
at
the
certain times of the
property
day
and
because we
charge us
only
money.
allow so much shadow. They can't have any leaf on, there can't be any snow, there can't be any ice.
Gotcha.
It's very particular weather that they fly at.
Just put up big canvas over my whole property.
So out in the rural areas, it's gonna be like it has been in the past.
Right,
Nothing's gonna
which is
change
usually
it.
isn't an issue. The only thing we're looking for there, we're seeing if trees have been dug up and they're now tilling it, vice versa. They've let tilled ground grow up into brush and we need to change the category of land use.
Hmm.
So
Can you
that,
get-
that we can see pretty easily.
Can you get it cheaper if you take trees out?
You mean your assessment
Yes.
versus your taxes? If you're not tilling it, there are 3 different kinds of
You're
land
not gonna kill it,
classes
though.
for farmland.
I didn't just get the
You're gonna
shovel.
plant corn in it.
You can do whatever you want.
I just had 9
Start
trees
row cropping.
removed, so I expect my taxes to be
Oh,
low.
not here in town.
Oh, what the hell, what am I care about that?
Plant corn in it.
That's what I was telling you.
Shut up.
Are there any objections?
Nope.
I have a
Carl?
question. I know, have you been in contact with Nanette or the GSI on this new next gen with 911?
Nanette and I talk occasionally with address issues, but she hasn't mentioned much about it. We did talk about getting the pictometry, which is the real pricey. Their bid was like $170,000 for a flight. That's the 3D, and she didn't seem to need that. She was happy with what we were using now, but other than that, I haven't heard
Okay.
anything more.
Well, I know we've got a big contract, I think it's like 300,000 that we've spent on this next gen thing that's required. And it's the same company that you work with that we got the contract with, and I know they're in the process of getting all this information, so we'll have more accurate information when we get a 911 call,
Right.
and they'll be able to see. I don't understand all of it, but I just didn't know whether she'd been in contact with you, and
Yes.
or whether our GSI company, GIS, I guess. GSI, that's sort of weird.
We know what you meant.
Yeah, we know what you mean, yeah.
But I just wondered if they'd been in contact with you, and
Right, and these flights should just underlay what they've already got mapped.
Right.
And that'll only help them as new houses are built, houses are torn down, or an entrance point, et cetera. That's what I think they're looking for, is the access to each property. So if that's pinpointed,
right.
the new photos will allow them to pinpoint new places or maybe remove if something's been torn down. I don't know the specifics of what she needs, but it's just the photography will
Right.
be better for her as well.
Well, somehow with this new equipment, we're utilizing what you photographed somehow.
Right.
I don't understand it all.
Right.
Okay.
You might touch base with her just one more time
Sure.
and let her know if the board has no objection to you going to this 6-inch.
To let her know.
Yeah, and make sure there's no way that we can't dovetail something in with their resources and our resources to give everybody a better deal for
Right.
what they're spending.
Well, that's why I'd asked her about the pictometry.
I'm
I
sure,
thought maybe
I just-
they'd wanna go in, but she said, no, what we had was perfectly, met their needs anyway.
Okay.
That's fine, I just thought I'd
Thanks.
mention that. Any objections then?
Nope.
All's within the bid limits, everything's fine. Thank you, Dean.
All right, very good.
Appreciate it.
I'll be under your hair, thank
You're
you.
not in our hair, we appreciate seeing you.
Thank
Stay
you.
well. Adam?
I really have nothing new. Our numbers have definitely been up. We're seeing lots of COVID transports, so we're dealing with that as it comes. Knock on wood, we haven't had any staffing issues with that. I know fire department has some issues right now with COVID, so they are not going to be responding with us unless we absolutely need them. So in the meantime, if it's something serious, I'll just be rolling multiple trucks to that location to handle the call. But all's well so far, unless you guys have anything for me.
I have a question. Has the regular old-fashioned flu just disappeared?
No, I've seen a few positive cases, but I mean, we're just at the front end of flu season, so give it another couple months, that'll be kicking into.
Everything classified as COVID, basically, no matter what?
I mean, a lot of the ones coming in for COVID symptoms are getting both swabs done, COVID and flu, so
Okey
They
doke.
have separate tests.
they are tested for
Specific for flu,
everything.
I'm
specific
just-
for COVID.
Being facetious here.
You get your shot?
I don't have, never had a flu shot in my life. Never
Just-
had,
just
never had,
in-
never had a
You're
flu.
kinda strange.
Just up to this date so far, I
I
think
am,
we're
right?
pushing 500 cases for November. So,
How's the staff at the hospital? Are they still having problems?
staffing throughout the hospital is a big issue right now. We've got a lot of staff. If you're contract traced, you're still working. Obviously, everyone's wearing N95s at all times. But there's a lot of departments that are having some staffing issues just with the COVID. Like I said, knock on wood, ours isn't one of them as of yet. If it does, we do have a contingency plan in place to go down to 2 trucks per shift. We'll still always maintain a minimum of 2 trucks, but we may not have that 3rd truck available should COVID hit our department.
You may not have any choice, period.
Yeah, I mean,
There's not much you can do about
we're,
that.
we're kind of rolling with the punches at this point, so. Our staff is being floated throughout the hospital, to fill other departments on off days. I mean, it's obviously being offered as overtime, but I mean, we're having to help in the hospital some more, so everybody's stretched thin right now. So, like I said, we're just kind of rolling the punches as they come.
Have you noticed a lot more helicopter flights?
I won't say a lot more, but we have had an uptick here in the past couple of weeks of some pretty serious calls. Yeah.
I just noticed they fly directly over my house, went both back and forth, and I just seem like, I just hear them all, not all the time, but you know, there isn't a week that goes by that I don't, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a week.
I think it's,
Mess up your afternoon nap or what?
I think it's the new ER docs are a little more, term I want to use.
So we're
Considering
actually,
the old ones,
Yeah,
the old ones were not quite as,
I don't know, I feel like we're requesting helicopters more than ER is, but
but all of our ER docs are new, so they're a little more, I don't know what the word I want to use.
I will say, pretty much every hospital anywhere around here, their ICUs are full, so when we were transferring out COVIDs, a lot of these hospitals are not accepting them anymore, so we are actually having to keep COVID at Parish right now. We don't have any we have had some last week, but we currently don't have any in the hospital right now.
Yeah, they had one, I think, on
We had-
Thursday.
Okay, we had 2 last week, they have both since gone home.
What, what do you do, isolate them from everybody else? Is that what they do?
Yep, so we have, I don't know if you guys know, there's a back part of the ER that was called the old special care unit. That area has been turned into an isolation unit, so it's had barriers put up. We do have, they call it the cold, warm, and hot zone, kind of based on where you're putting on your equipment going in, but there's a 3-bed COVID unit at the hospital currently and we do have a contingency to expand that should we need to.
Yeah, the air circulates in that one room only, so it doesn't go out, right?
2 rooms.
Two.
2 of the 3 are negative pressure, so we can.
Didn't know that.
We had, goes along with it, we had a meeting of the health department, ESDA, and the hospital on Thursday to deal with people who were able to go home or didn't have a home to go to. We have contracts all set up and food, people checking on them, etc. And that's all in place now. It had expired in August, and when it was low and nobody thought it was gonna come back, and now it's reinstituted. And cleaning and all the things we need to do for people.
Is that like motel rooms or something?
Yes. Yes.
We have started a program also where we usually do, we're planning on between 5 and 10 a week. We're actually going out to these residences or wherever we need to actually do checkups on these people to make sure everyone's still doing well. And not just COVID, this could be other things right now, but primarily we're checking on these COVID patients.
The hospital can do up to 20 meals. Hopefully it never gets to that point, but they have the capacity to go and help with providing 3 meals. They take it out at lunch and it's hot, and then they give them a bag for supper and dinner, or breakfast the next day. And so all of that's in place and we're good to go on
The health department's setting up a screening, it's in the paper,
that. Right.
in the parking lot, so it's free.
The
but-
2nd or something of December?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can go get screened.
You guys have any other questions for me?
Nope.
If not, I'm gonna duck in.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you seeing you. Stay
you.
well. Andy?
We had a Zoom meeting, I was on, so we had it on Wednesday, or Wednesday, I think, with the Northern Edgar County Ambulance.
Right.
Everybody kind of discussed some issues, and there's a few things, it's just kind of kicked it off anyway. Concerns and
You're collecting information.
collecting information at this point. So I'm gonna talk to Mark Isaac about some legalities and what can and can't be done with the money that they gotta get. So we kinda kicked that off anyway.
Was that the committee that's
Yeah.
working on that?
So. You were there, weren't you?
Martin said he was part of it.
Yeah.
Kevin said he was there.
You know, my big concern, and this is probably thinking more as a Chrisman address residence, is the physical property that it's housed in. Because, I don't know how this has been handled before, but, you know, it's currently a publicly owned building. And what do you do with that? Because if you're gonna dissolve the entity that owns it, what happens next?
The, what I understand from the taxing bodies that have been putting money into it is that somehow they would sell or transfer the facility if that was needed. And then the money would be redistributed on a percentage basis back to the taxing bodies.
So if Company A, which I understand that makes sense. If Company A, then they have to buy it? Or they have to come up with their own location then?
Either way, I mean, they'd have the option. In talking to Derek, you know, you would say where they had to emanate from, or where,
Yeah,
and then it was up to them to figure out how they wanted to do that. You can't require them to buy a building.
yeah.
You don't wanna require that they have a presence in, somewhere in that, wherever they decide
That
the
they
best
would-
place to have it.
That they would dispatch from Chris or wherever it was, okay?
So then, probably Company A would buy the building, and then when they got the contract, and then if they didn't have the contract, then they'd have a building that they needed to unload.
Buy or lease. I mean, the lease would be an option also, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and they wouldn't have to buy it till after the contract was let,
Yeah,
Right.
okay?
There's a lot of variables
Right.
to deal with here. Some of the things, there's a lot of variables to deal with. Yeah.
So you set up you haven't set up the specifications yet to fill
No,
out?
that's
the
what
bid?
this
That's what we're
committee's
doing.
doing.
I mean, that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
So you would not have them required to have a building?
No,
in that
we're
area?
not saying any,
No, I would assume that we would require something similar to what we have it
Right.
here, that they have to have a presence here
right,
in the community and have a
and
presence
they'd have to be,
centrally located for the area that they will be serving up there somewhat.
and that they have a time limit in which to respond, okay? And that would dictate to them what they had to do physically as far as infrastructure. Does that,
Yeah.
there's really no answer to that question yet.
well, and I wasn't very knowledgeable or involved when all this happened here to have any historical perspective on it. Just wondered.
And remember, whatever the committee comes up with still would be reviewed by the county board as a total and either rejected or accepted as the bid specifications, okay?
And how's your heat been doing, Augie? Better?
No, the boiler's working.
The boiler's working.
Ray turns the boiler on early in the morning and then he shuts it off And they've,
not gotten that situation. They
Well-
haven't, they've been, I know one thing, and I don't know if Ross has got them internet
He's
capability.
working on it right now.
Okay.
Didn't you, you were,
Yeah, I was in on those.
yeah, the
But-
last was, he was checking with the company that was responsible out at the health department. I mean, Ross can't get through that firewall, because that's somebody else's firewall at the health department.
Now, can you get through the one at the courthouse? I guess I was under the impression too, you
Well-
couldn't get through that one either.
Well, that's all, there's two, that's
Right.
Augie's, and we don't want anything to do with that one, I don't believe. But, he and Chuck have been going back and forth. I told Ross to get help,
Okay.
whatever he needed to get the help to make it happen, okay? Because he was working on two projects, 911, and then this one became priority. And then the other one that he's working on, once he's done with these two, is allowing some of the elected officials to be able to work at home on their on laptops. And we have 4 laptops. 2 of them are set up to do that, and 2 of them aren't yet. So that's the next thing. Unless there's something else that I'm not aware of. And we're supposed to get together on the 2nd. At what time, Augie? Has the time been set yet?
10 o'clock, I think, at 9 or 10.
Yeah. I
Uh,
sent a little note to, go ahead,
No,
sorry.
No.
I sent a little note to him, I said, how can we close out this project when it's not working?
Good. I talked to him, well, then he told me it was working. He told me I got it figured out.
Now, they
So-
found some holes in the system.
Yeah.
Now, when you say holes.
Something in the line, one of the refrigerant lines. I don't understand it.
No, I'll get back with him, because that was, he told me everything seemed to be fine, so what
It's
comes
not,
out of
it's
Chuck's mouth.
I didn't think the boiler was supposed to work until it got really cold.
Well,
That's our
they
point.
turned that up. I mean, they've raised the temperature to when that would kick on. Meaning,
Because it's not working right.
cause you
No,
can sit there and it'd be 58 degrees when I walk in.
oh Jesus.
And if it weren't for the boiler,
And then we didn't know that that wasn't working, so nobody had turned on the boiler yet. So then we were missing a part for the boiler, so that was what, 2 days, Augie? That we
Oh,
had to
yeah.
wait,
yeah,
maybe 3?
yeah. So we've shut that off in our office because we're not gonna sit under air conditioning.
Right.
Right, it was
And-
blowing cold
and-
air or something.
But at any given time, it will kick on automatically. And nobody's touched it. And so somebody's controlling it somewhere. But it's not,
Well, anyway, I think we should go ahead and have the meeting. It just may not be the closeout meeting, cause I'm not signing anything.
Right, I wouldn't sign anything.
Okay, and I sent some documents up, I think we sent them up to Mark to take a look at. I was signing, they wanted me to sign a document for October of 19, and I'm
Yeah.
going, I'm not signing any deal that retroactively may do something, and so we're checking that out. Okay,
Okay. Oh, no, that's all I got, I think.
cat reports?
Doing great. Keeping me up all night, telling me that's all right.
He called me the other day and had to hang up because he had a cat in his lap or something, I forget what it was.
There's something wrong with you, Burr.
No,
You need help.
well, my wife won't give me any time of day, so now I got 2 cats, and
I get it,
they
brother.
kinda like me.
At your age, you don't need any.
Hopefully they're not using your chair as a litter box.
Not yet, anyway. They poop more than any 2 cats I ever saw.
Hey, when you gotta go, you gotta go.
Health department, I told you about the, screening coming up, it was in the paper, I think, so. Andrew's having trouble with her computer, so I told her, just get a dish, put on top of the building, get rid of the, whatever she has, she has a new wave, I think. So, it's just gonna cost the same, so, that's already hearing the problem. If that's all right,
She can get through Dish?
huh?
She can get internet through Dish?
I would think so, yeah, too, should be able to.
I don't think
I
so.
told her to check on it, but I don't know.
Can you get it through Dish?
Yeah, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's another carrier though, isn't it?
I don't know, cause we didn't do it, but I know they're always advertising it.
I would
You
just
said-
take.
Yeah, they partner.
She's gonna get the Dish Network or a satellite,
Yeah,
satellite,
yeah.
maybe from it.
We have
I told
Dish
this
partners
guy-
with, I mean, it's pricey.
Well, she said with any more than what's paid now,
Well, she-
at least it'd work. She said it just shuts off on its own. And she has a lot of paperwork she has to do on it, so.
Well, I don't understand why she doesn't call her provider
Who?
and tell them to get out there and fix it.
Well, they say it don't show up.
They cancel it too.
Yeah, that's like me trying to get
Have her
my,
come downtown and do her paperwork
yeah,
for, in the meantime.
well, we'll see. I got tired of hearing it.
Carl? Phil? Augie? I'm sorry, Lisa? Jeez. You were sitting out of order. I apologize.
Order.
You're out of order.
You're out of order, Lisa.
Yeah, Russ, your seat will be right over here
Yeah,
Right.
next time.
yeah, your seat's.
We have
right
assigned seats.
here next to me. Yeah, it's a pecking order. Miss.
You may want to sit one seat down though.
Yeah,
You don't want to smell like cat.
cats don't, they don't smell.
I'm sorry, Lisa. Did you have anything that you want to discuss?
No, I need to call Janelle Adams because she's on the PEDCO board, and I haven't done that yet.
I talked to used to be Alan, and he was going to see, he thought if you wanted to be on the board, that would be great. I didn't know whether we were loading you up though between Chamber, Petco, and then, what's the other one?
HRC.
HRC.
That'd probably be a good amount, anything to not be the airport.
Couple of them, hey. A couple of those boards only meet once a quarter, okay?
HRC is one.
So, I mean, if you can't get a hold of her, just let Alan know. That's what I wanted to talk to you the other day about. We just never got a chance to talk. Cause I didn't know I didn't wanna just automatically, yeah, she'll do it, and then you go, start glaring at me, so, at any rate, that's fine. No, they would like to see you there.
Okay.
Augie,
No, I'm good.
you're good? These are agenda items. Have you had a chance to look at it? It's in your packet. The most important thing we're gonna do, everything's important, but the most important thing is the budget and the levy. We absolutely need a quorum so that we can get this passed next Wednesday.
You're gonna do it right away, you said?
Yeah, it's first thing up on the
So,
the
When is it?
next, a week from this
I vote
Wednesday.
no on 8 and 9.
Whoa. When is what?
The 25th.
Yeah.
What's that?
Okay.
This Wednesday.
It's this Wednesday, Jeff.
Oh, it's this Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's this Wednesday. Why did I think it's?
I don't know.
Anyway, it's a week, thank you, Carl. It's
The day before Thanksgiving.
2 days from now,
Right.
9 o'clock. That's when we need a quorum for absolutely. Andy, you need to disappear for 8 or 9.
okay.
They disappeared all the time.
Anything for booze.
Let's see, we have the labor contract with the deputies that's ready to be signed. They have already ratified it, and, so we'd like to get that taken care of. Let's see. We've got the moratorium on the wind farm apps that we can talk about. You have it in your packet. It's a very brief one. We can talk about it on Wednesday, or we can talk about it now, either way.
I do have a bit of information to share on that.
Now might be the best time.
Yes, Lisa.
I had a couple of questions, and so I contacted Cindy Ehrlich, whom I had never met or heard of before she spoke at our other county board meeting. And as a result, yesterday I got 9 emails with different documents from her that if and when we do a moratorium, we have a lot of reference materials.
Well, whether we pass a moratorium or not, we're setting up a committee for the purpose of reviewing the ordinance to see what we need to do to, and as Mark put in there, setbacks, noise, and deactivation, among other things that need to be dealt with in there. And, so we're, you know, whether, I'm not sure that, talk to some of you have mixed feelings about a moratorium at this point, so. Anyway,
Based on your conversation with her and looking at these documents, do you think that maybe our ordinance maybe needs some further looking into to make some changes?
Yeah, because my big one was on decommissioning, because I wanted to understand the relationship between the wind company, the landowner, and the county. If we're holding funds, how does that get used?
well, we're asking not to be involved in that, because under the current one, we would not hold funds.
Right, but we would set up the mechanism.
We would set up the mechanism
Right.
that would be registered in the land transactions and be in Augie's office, just like any other land transaction. And that would have the legal force of the law that they've negotiated between the two of them. And, you know, our thoughts were, and maybe it's not the committee's or the future thoughts of the board, but in 20 years, we don't wanna see the board obligated and the taxpayers obligated for a lot of issues that should have been strongly handled in the permitting stage to make sure that the participants, one side and the other, had adequately addressed that issue, and that we not stayed out of it, but we're talking about a private business and a private landowner dealing with one another. So,
But how, I guess, you know, if we're not involved and it's agreement between them two, how do we assure that the decommissioning is satisfactory to how it should be?
that's what happens, that's why we hire with that $75,000 an expert that reviews the agreements that they have and makes sure that it's satisfactory.
According to how we set up the rules for the decommissioning?
Yes. Or, you know, we can add further we can add further requirements during the permitting to make sure that is handled correctly, and that we don't put the taxpayers on the hook in 20 or 16 or 30 years.
What, is there gonna be an escrow fund?
Well, it doesn't call for that specifically, but that's maybe what's in the contracts that the private landowner has with the company that's putting up.
My concern would be, these guys trade, I mean, these guys go out and put a bunch of these up, then they sell.
Well, but if they're registered land deals, okay, in other words,
What if they go-
easements travel to whoever owns them.
That's right, but what if one goes bankrupt?
Well, somebody's gonna own it,
Yeah,
and then all the requirements of the
that's
ground,
my concern.
well, but all the requirements of that land and that land transaction, just like if you file a lien against it, that follows it wherever it goes.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm
Yeah,
not saying
no,
that's
I-
but that's the idea behind it. I mean, we don't wanna dump $30 million worth of decommissioning on the taxpayers. I don't wanna be,
Right, that's my, yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
I don't see how, I guess I don't understand how we can assure that that's taken care of. I mean, is it not in this?
no, it would be in the permitting.
Wasn't that lady really
Well, then
concerned about
who
that?
sets up the rules for the permitting?
That's
See,
what
I
that-
don't know.
That's what that,
Carl, are
that's
you
what we
saying
were
that-
looking at.
Yes.
What the
That it
rules
should
for
be in
permitting.
the actual ordinance itself, is that
Yeah.
what you're saying?
And
And that would go on public record. And it would talk about decommissioning.
If you wait till
Somebody
permitting,
gotta
it
take
makes.
over.
And it does talk about decommissioning, but you're saying you don't think it's,
If you see
complete
these
enough.
documents,
right. Well, and
this is
that's,
a, this is a preamble to what it should look like, not
Okay.
what it should look like.
accept or not accept it, I'm not explaining it.
Cause I looked at it.
then,
you don't have a copy of the ordinance, do you? Carl? Do you? Okay.
And I had never met this Cindy before either, but Boone, Livingston, and Ford and Iroquois have worked together.
Yeah, and they're all basically, they basically said, we don't want wind farms in those counties, period. There's no way, we've talked to several companies, they're not gonna build any more wind farms in that.
in those particular counties.
Yes,
And you may, we as a board may decide we don't want some of that guidelines as stringent as theirs are, but if you don't know what really stringent is, how do you know what you want versus what you have accidentally omitted?
but you can, as time goes on, you can continue to evolve the ordinance to put additional things in it or subtract to it, depending on, technology and experience.
Definitely, if, as time goes on with technology and experience, no doubt, but you don't want to have a wind farm in there and then like Ford did, through experience, realize your ordinance didn't really meet your needs.
And that's why I'm thinking maybe we should go with a moratorium till we can look at some of these things to add to it, so we don't have some company come in possibly, and before we get these changes made.
It's fine.
Is there an option saying we don't
I
want
mean-
wind farms in?
No, you
No,
don't,
I
you
don't- I
can't
wouldn't
say
do
that
that.
in Illinois.
Okay, I just want,
So what some of these counties have done is made it so difficult for them to do
They
it,
don't
that it's
come in.
economically, at least under the current conditions, for them to come into the
now,
counties.
they could do that, right? If landowners don't want them.
Some
Well-
landowners probably do though. Some
Yeah,
landowners-
quite a few do, actually.
I had one approach me this morning saying he could put as many as they wanted on his
Yeah,
land,
I've gotten a couple of calls on the 3250 saying, what are you doing to us? Okay,
I mean, why are you doing, not allowing them in?
but
No.
they
Make it
know
so
that
tough,
it's-
they can't come in,
yeah,
so difficult,
Making it,
so difficult.
that they don't wanna do it enough financially feasible.
well, there's a lot of, as you pointed, I just, you know, I wanna hear from some of the counties. There are counties out there that love their wind ordinances and love their farms. All we're hearing from is from folks that don't like wind farms
right.
and have an
We're
axe
out
to
here on
grind.
both sides.
Okay, we need to hear both sides, we need to get the wind farms in here, we need to get the, several of them saying what they can live with, whether we believe them or not. We need to hear what they have to say. I kinda like the 3,000 or 3,250.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
I've had
not
some
because of the
comments on it.
distance,
Right,
because it makes them work with everybody.
right.
Okay, it's, in other words, if there's a house sitting in there, it makes them offer and gets them involved in participating in the project.
So the
Did I
thirty,
say that right?
the 3250
It may be
includes not just the land it's on, but anybody else that's
Right,
close.
close.
Right.
That's within
Yes.
that distance.
Right.
And they may opt to say, well, okay, you can put it up a little closer, it doesn't matter that
But
they
you gotta
agree
pay me
to
for
it.
that.
Right,
So it's basically up to the landowner, as long as it doesn't
Yes.
infringe on somebody not involved.
right.
We need to figure out somehow with the setbacks, with the decommissioning, with that we're putting a level playing field in, that the landowner, number one, is protected, our taxpayers are protected, and that we still encourage a little bit of business
Well,
around.
we haven't heard from enough people.
That's fine. Well, then why don't we just plan on passing the moratorium? Mark says we can only have it for so long, and he's put a date in here, I think it's what, 6 months, Lisa?
I don't know.
Okay, in 6 months, but
November
you
through
can't
May.
just call a moratorium and not do
Right.
anything. I mean, we're gonna have to do something.
Well, in that time span, we
Well,
should
that's
be
why
able to
you
get
got-
all the info we need. 6
What?
months, that's plenty.
So we can answer some of the, we're not gonna answer all of our questions to everybody's satisfaction today. Or
We don't have the answers, a lot of them, do we?
Well-
I've heard both sides. Some say they like the 3,200, some say, well, if you put it 1,100, then we can't have wind farms, so I've heard both
250
sides.
sounds good to me.
Huh? Well, at any rate, so, things, I guess we don't, so go ahead, Carl.
And could you, maybe by Wednesday, give us copies of the information that she sent you, something to look at? And was she was from Ford County? Did she send a copy of their wind
Yeah, and
farm?
it's still a work in progress.
Is it?
Yeah,
But yeah, I can do
Just
that.
something for us to look at to compare.
Sure.
I think it probably with all the questions we've got, be prudent to, take a hard look and if we're comfortable with the moratorium, it's only 6 months, I can't believe that that's gonna make all the difference in the world. From what I understand, none of them is in a big hurry right now anyway, so.
But like we were asking before,
Anybody's trying to negotiate.
on the decommissioning, if it's not totally addressed in this, then how do we control, if the landowner and the company come to an agreement on the decommissioning, how do we have a say in it?
We don't,
Okay.
which is what we're being encouraged to stay. We're not zoned, so it's the tower is a private property issue.
Okay, but how do we make sure 20 years from now when it's obsolete?
We don't, it's a private property issue. It'd be like saying Walmart's gonna have to tear their building down when they leave or whatever, we don't.
You see, I believe this.
We have no say so.
You what?
You know
Well,
what?
that's the reason
Right.
Jeff is misunderstanding is because there's a desperate attempt to make us responsible for that. And in talking to certain folks, including the chairman, we don't want that responsibility.
But how do we protect the community 20 years from now?
Well, you just can't. Like if I was gonna build a cell tower, next to your house, there's no provision there that I have to tear it down. There's whatever they're building out here next to GSI, there's no provision to tear that down.
The simple answer to that is zoning.
Yes. yeah.
That's what?
Going to zoning. And that we'd have to address those issues. And then we could control the situation and we'd have a better leg to stand on, to stand between, and please, don't interpret this as I'm supporting zoning, okay?
Right, yeah.
But it would give us a seat at the table between a landowner and a company. Right now, we don't have a seat at the table because we are not zoned. Now, I think several of the counties that you have discussed have zoning,
Yeah.
so
Can
please.
you zone out in the middle of nowhere?
It's a
No,
county.
you can't
law.
just do that, you gotta zone
You
everything.
zone the county.
Gotta zone the county.
But if you take the tact that the Farm Bureau and the developer wants, which we don't, if you take the tact that inside your ordinance you create some zoning, where you say the county is the primary beneficiary of the abandoned tower.
I don't think you wanna touch
That's
that.
where they want us.
Yes.
And Jeff was putting.
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
explain, and I did a really bad job of it, but that's what I was trying to
Who
say.
wants that?
Everyone does.
Everybody would like us to step into that breach
No.
and have the responsibility in 20 years.
Understand.
I'm saying,
No.
go ahead, Lisa, I
That's
talk too
big
much.
money.
Yes, it
I,
is.
I agree, I'm not really into wanting zoning either, but have y'all been on the northern end of the county? Have you taken a field, I know you probably have you taken a field trip across the northern end of the county? You really ought to do that. The wind turbines will happen. There's no doubt. There is so much wide open ground up there that is not locally owned. If you look at a plat book, it's going to happen. But what I foresee, and I don't see a way around it, Carl, you're kind of skating on this one too, talking about this, is rough numbers. Let's say the wind company gives you whomever, the $100,000 to put into whatever mechanism we have. 20 years from now, that 100,000 is worth 300,000. The landowner is not from here. He has 5 on his property, and he's like, I got 300,000 for each one of those towers. I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna take those down, and I never do. That then becomes more valuable than it is a negative, because he doesn't care.
Well,
Point well taken.
And I don't have an answer, I just have a problem.
I guess I'm too tunnel.
No?
I keep thinking about the taxpayers in 20 years. You know, obviously there's an aesthetic problem from day one. And having a broken tower or a non-usable tower in 20, 25 years is a problem. And
Well, that's a liability for the owner, it should be,
but
right? I mean, that doesn't affect us. I mean, it's an eyesore, and it's his property, and it's worth less because somebody's got to either fix the thing or tear it down. That's his
And the
problem.
technology has not caught up with some of the other things that it has. It's caught up with other things, but not that particular issue.
Well, 'cause
And the
it's
salvage value of those is not what you think.
probably nothing. It's like
They can't get rid of the
it's
bridge.
like an abandoned house. It's a liability. It's
Well,
not,
it's-
there's no
Look
value
at what
to
it
it. I mean,
is to all our communities around here trying to figure out that problem. All of our communities are plagued by abandoned houses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big
And they're-
problem.
So,
Big deal.
picture in 20 years, but then again, at the same time, you can't say to Mary and Gary that live down here and they've saved all their lives that they're gonna have to pay extra taxes to take those things down when they're on private property. And part of something that happened between, you know, a private citizen, a landowner, and a company.
Just
Yeah,
like
sure.
I mean, because it's hurt their property value and it's not their property.
And they're having to, maybe the county has to come up with the money to tear them all down.
I don't,
No,
That's where you gotta be
yeah.
careful.
That's
the-
what that's what they want us to do.
no, I wouldn't touch that.
Well, there's a bunch sitting already across the country, just
Oh, yeah,
so we have
no.
perspective.
Right.
And they're looking for who needs to be tearing them down.
And if we come up
And
with
what's
them,
happened to the money?
I'm not sure that,
That's what I'd like to know.
Exactly.
What's happened to the money that was having to be set aside in the beginning?
well, I also believe that there's been letters of credit and
See, I don't
performance
believe in
bonds. I
those.
don't either.
I don't either. That's what they were wanting to do in Vermillion County, Illinois. I think that's what they
And
did.
they can't figure out who to go after.
well, and even if you got $50,000 a unit, say you put in 50 of them and you got $25 million, okay? In 20 years, it might cost you $75 million to take them down. So you got 25 million, who's gonna chip in the other 50 million? And that's not based on any, I'm just using.
That's like when they pass tax up there for the fire department, people call me, living in another town, wanna know if they still have to pay the taxes on that land. They don't give a crap about wind farms. I mean, they don't live there, live somewhere else.
Well, of course, then a lot of folks that live somewhere else don't have to look at them.
That's what I'm saying.
They're saying, yeah, so I might bring it up, I could get another.
spot. They get money for,
Sorry, I'm just all the can of worms here. What about taxes?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about taxes and taxing wind farms.
Oh, we should have asked, there's a set formula that the state of Illinois renews every 5 or 7 years. In other words, it's set up, it's been renewed a couple of times. It says, okay, you've got a turbine, and it says how that will be taxed. And by the way, Kirk was talking about it being taxed on what it was generating. It's, according to state law, it's on what it could generate. In other words, if it's a 5-watt unit, the taxes are on a 5-watt even if it's only generating 3, okay? That's according to our council. At any rate, that's how it's done. Now, the problem, risk we run is that that law is due up, I think, in 22, late 22. And if they don't renew it, I mean, you run the risk that there's no taxes at all on the thing. but they have been renewing them.
So this is taxed like real estate?
Yeah, it'd be right on your tax bill, but there's a formula that if you wanna drop by, Dina can give you the formula, or it's in the law. So it's a set amount. And of course, most of that, just like land taxes, goes to the school districts, and then it steps down as depending on what their levy is.
And so there's something in the landowner's contract that the wind company pays that?
Well, they're required anyway. I mean, I don't
And
know
then
why.
when it's decommissioned, then it's the landowner's responsibility to pay that tax?
Well, I assume so. I don't know. I don't think we ever got far enough to ask that question. Now, the thing you can do, and some counties have done, is commit them to just automatically pay it whether it's state law or not. I don't know whether that would be,
I wondered about that.
in other words, you would take away for the duration of its usable life or serviceable life, you will follow the formula whether the state approves it or not.
You know, that might be a good thing because if you stated its usable life and it becomes used for less than its usable life, then they're still on the hook.
Well, I don't know whether the taxpayer would still, I'd say the landowner, not the taxpayer. I don't know whether they would still owe taxes on it if it's not producing electricity.
It depends on who's being held accountable for paying.
Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
That's not a can of worms. That's something we need to
Yeah.
take a close look at.
In other words, we've got a lot of work to do before we actually pass the ordinance.
We've already got an ordinance.
I mean,
Amend the
well,
ordinance.
that's what I'm saying.
Right, that's what your intent on doing.
Your intent is on Wednesday to do a resolution for a moratorium for
Right,
6
it's
months.
in here.
That allows us time to
Yeah,
do that.
yeah.
That's good.
Yep, I agree.
But Jeff and I both agreed, and I'm sure he's passed this along, that there's an application fee. I think it's not to exceed 75,000, does that sound right? And both of us over the last 2
6
years,
months.
whatever, just heavily in the last 6 months. And so the board has the same comfort. You know, you're charged, you're allowed by statute to come up with an ordinance for wind farms. This body, you're allowed to. The law says, hey, if they're gonna put wind farms up, you 7 folks can put some restrictions on that. That's step one. So, in my opinion, as a citizen, not as a helper or as an employee, is you're doing a fine job of that. You guys are saying, okay, well, what's that mean? How involved do we get? But I'll get to the punchline quickly here. And you're just 7-member volunteers. But if someone comes up with $75,000 worth of application fee, Jeff has already said he's gonna take that money and go find some experts. Now this 7-member body who's asking questions like, well, who pays the taxes if they walk away in 10 years and stuff like that? Jeff had indicated to me that he intends on taking that some of that application and finding, I won't call it counsel, let's call it expertise, consultants, how's that sound good?
Yeah.
And then you guys are gonna pass that along, and a lot of these really hard questions are gonna be put into the lap of a professional. Once you have a $75,000 application fee. And the application fee is a siting fee. So I come to you guys, I'm a developer, I'm gonna put a $100 million wind farm up. I give you $75,000 and say, here's my plan. And your response is, oh, what was this again, wind farms? Oh yeah, well, let's go find someone that can, let's get counsel, let's beef up our side. And then you get, I don't wanna say excited, but then
We
you
get
start
diligent. We get
diligent.
Right,
Now, we do not have to approve
that's what I'm asking.
their application.
That's
We
right.
can say to them, we find this application deficient.
Would you get their money back?
Right.
No,
No,
your consultant.
it's non-refundable. It says it right in there, non-refundable.
Oh, that's
So I see that as a big
makes sense.
sign.
Right.
That makes me.
But
sit
I
next to
guess-
you.
You know, we've have the ordinance, they've applied, and then we look at theirs, and then we change the rules. This is what you have to do.
We actually get into,
Could do that.
deeper into the rules, let's just say.
And it may be a
It's
statement
broad-
that we'll look at the permit. You know, maybe there's some verbiage we can put in to ease your question on how we can, you know, there's certain issues that if they're out there just taking advantage of landowners, I don't care what our ordinance says, we're not gonna give them a permit, okay?
You don't have to.
And if they really haven't solved the problem, you know, like one of the big concerns that the lawyer from Farm Bureau said, that he said, you guys should really get together to this group of farmers and landowners and really share and get yourself a group of attorneys that work together and, you know, just all go together and figure out what you're all gonna do collectively, so, you know, Hormick Stump over here that owns 50 acres doesn't get it stuck into him, and he's the one holding the bag in 20 years. Because they will do that. I mean, they're gonna do the best they can to protect their companies and shareholders.
Well, we already had somebody, I'm sure it's no longer viable or applicable, but we already had somebody who, all oars aren't necessarily in the water, and he signed a contract the first time somebody came and spoke at Hume 15, 17 years ago. Yeah, and there's not much you can do to help folks like that.
Is that Indec, back when Indec was running?
I don't even remember. I ran a
But
meeting
I-
there for
Did
extension.
it run out?
long
Isn't it like
ago.
a 10-year?
Probably so. But, you know, they're always gonna know who they can
Right,
get quickly.
right.
Now, we've had
And we can't protect them very much other than.
25 or 35
ordinance.
people that have basically signed a basic agreements that said they're interested in having a wind farm on their property, okay? And they're negotiating with another, I don't know, 15, 20.
You know.
So,
So they've already signed contracts with 35 people?
well, they have preliminary,
Okay.
okay? They're giving them, it's kind of like if an option to purchase. Picture that, and they're giving them a minimal amount, and
Right.
they've got a group of individuals that are willing to talk to them, okay? Yes, sir.
Have they hired an attorney? I know an attorney that's working with.
You and
some
I both
landowners.
know the same person, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I've talked to him and Lynn,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So if it matters to you guys, my comments come from a citizenry comment. And I'm saying you're, as a board, as a citizen, I'm just watching, you're doing a fine job.
I've heard the same thing.
You're doing a fine job. You're not making it easy, you're not
Yeah.
rolling over. You're saying if there's a property, someone living in a residence, that really got your attention,
Mhm.
right? So you said, if there's someone living there, they really got a 1.5, and then 3250.
Right.
Reasonable, but tough but fair, 1.5, 1.5 times for roads and telecommunications, and 1.5 times for non-adjoining property owners are both strong but reasonable. 2 thumbs up for me as a citizen. And then also as a citizen, you're saying, well, I really want to protect folks that are living there and have to look at them and be close to them because allegedly there's flickers and noises and bird kills and oil and whatever, allegedly. So I'm going to give them a little extra protection. And as Jeff has said 100 times, and as the consultant knows, the developer knows, the Farm Bureau knows, it has a variance clause in there. It says it's 3250 and a variance applies. That's called the good neighbor variance. So you guys take 3,250 from Carl's house, who hates wind farms, but you can get closer if you want to go knock on Carl's front door and have him sign a variance. We're all hearing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And then I think you guys sit comfortably and watch. And then I think when someone comes up with $75,000 and says, if we're getting serious, that the first thing you guys decide is, okay, who's our consultant? Let's be bringing in counsel or a professional consultant, but you're safe where you start. You don't want to start at 1,200 feet from a residence and then have a consultant come in and say, well, you really ought to be 3,250. 1.5, 1.5 are both fair and all over, used all over, shouldn't even be bothering your minds at all, supposed to do 1.5s. And the 3,250 strong, and the Farm Bureau and the developer are both saying, boy, that's awful strong. And as a constituent of yours, I'm saying I like that you're protecting the old farmstead where some grandpa and grandma's living up there and have to be close to it. And if they want, if they're serious enough, and these people have deep pockets, this is a $100 million project just to get started. They'll knock on the door and get the folks that don't like them, I don't want to say bought, but participating.
The big issue,
And if they can't, then they won't.
by the
Sound
way,
fair?
the attorney that you're talking about, I talked to him about a week and a half after we did that, and he'd had a chance to talk to some folks, and he goes, you know, that's really not a bad idea. He was fairly positive about it, that that would be inclusionary, as he called it, because it would get them talking to more people, and, you know, it might work out better. Now, whether that drops to $2,750 or goes to $3,500, we can debate that, but that's, I think one of the biggest issues is the decommissioning. And we definitely need to get some verbiage in there that gives us a little latitude in looking at those permits. And having the other side, the company understand, and the landowner say, we're not gonna just roll over on these just because you submit. We're gonna look at other issues that may not be covered in there to make sure that our folks, our landowners,
Are protected.
and our people in the county are protected.
And if I may, I'll interrupt Jeff.
No, you're fine, I interrupted you.
Inside your 7-member board application approval process, we say, we wanna see, you 7, not we wanna see what you've done with the property owners. Not that we're gonna get involved in it, because it's none of our business, it's a private property transaction. So this 7-member group of shepherds are gonna say, I don't like the way you've signed up Gary. He doesn't realize that $20,000 is not gonna decommission that. Why don't you go back and work with Gary again and come back to me? It says that. But at the same time, let's make it Jeff. Jeff doesn't wanna say, well, I'll take care of you, Gary. 20,000 is plenty, and in 20 years from now, and by the way, the difference between escrow and performance bond, they know factually these have a 20-year lifespan. They kept trying to play that with us early on. They said, well, we'll give you a performance bond. There's 2 parts to, there's a performance and an escrow. An escrow means we know it's going to happen. Here's cash for a future event that we agree we know will happen. Escrow, that's why we want cash. They're saying, no, let us sign up a performance guarantee in case it happens. Well, it's not a matter of if in case it happens, it's going to happen. So, the board approves, 7-member board approves the signing application,
That's cute.
and you state that you'd like to see the relationship they've got with this property owner. You'd like to see it, but you don't wanna own it. So at that point, you can say, well, $20,000 for Gary Henry's not gonna knock that tower down. Why don't you go back and work with him again and then come back to us? You can do that.
Well, these are all things we need to think about.
We got 6 months to work on it.
Oh, that's not a lot of time,
Not
right?
a lot.
Not a lot.
We have 6
We'll have
months
to
to
be
work.
very focused.
Yes, we will. And that's why I was a little worried about, I mean, everything that you got going and I got going, we gotta make sure that we all have the time to do it, so,
If it matters to you, I think you're done with me, right?
yes.
Okay, I think you guys are in a very safe place right now, whether you moratorium it or not. If it matters to you, what I think. Whether you put a moratorium on or not, I think you're in a really safe place. Decommissioning is something we can work on down the road, and it's not gonna get easy no matter what. And why create that problem until it's here? We've told them in black and white that we do not want the county to be the primary beneficiary, that the county is not going to be a zoning agent, and we're not gonna shepherd the project in its entirety. And they did push back. They said, oh no, you need to do that. Everybody does
The
that.
Farm Bureau, yeah.
Farm Bureau, everybody pushed back.
And I'm guessing that's what Ford, from what I've read, wants to do. And you know, maybe they're evolving, let's put it that way, so.
Yeah, I know of no one that's taken our position, by the way.
Yeah.
I know of no one.
So all these other counties are getting involved in that?
They are the primary beneficiary in each and every landowner's decommissioning plan, yes. The county of whatever, Ford, whatever county it is, it's the county itself that's the primary beneficiary of whatever instrument
That's a bunch of money.
the landowner signed up with. So it's just the landowner signed up with them for decommissioning, and that they're gonna have $100,000 in an escrow.
Stick it down.
You guys are the primary beneficiary of his decommissioning plan, and Jeff said,
What do you mean primary beneficiary?
Gary Henry has a house that they, or a little property owner, where they've signed him up for a decommissioning plan. He's signed a Illinois Department of Agriculture Impact Mitigation Agreement. That's what it is, AIMA. So he has signed an AIMA with Orsted, I'm sorry,
Nothing, that just, at the end of 20 years, they hand us the 100 grand.
and say it's your problem.
Yeah,
We're the primary beneficiary that he signed. That's the way all of them, as far as I know, everyone that I've ever seen is written. And both the developer and even the Farm Bureau has
We don't
told
want
us,
that.
and we said we don't want.
I know what
Tower.
but
That
it's,
won't touch what it's gonna cost, take one of those things.
Well, their mindset is that they'd rather the county lead a decommissioning of a farm with 50 towers instead of 50 separate decommissioning projects.
I think either way's gonna stink.
I do too.
I was
Because
just,
otherwise, that absentee landowner is gonna take the money, run and leave you with a rusty tower with fiberglass
Well, it's-
blades that come
I
flying
checked out
out.
both outhouses,
It's
and
not
that
good.
one stunk the least.
Exactly.
Okay?
Somewhere
Well,
else.
he's not gonna be able to get his value out of that land if he wants to sell it. I mean,
You just farm around it.
sure, I mean, he'll farm around, granted, I don't wanna see those, but I don't wanna get.
As soon as the blades fall off and whatever oil has leaked all over the place and contaminated,
Well, now,
it's just a big old tower.
no, I agree with you,
But it's a mess in it.
but I don't wanna get involved. I don't
I
want
know,
that
it's
to
a
be part of
catch
something on the
22.
county.
It really
Well,
is.
it's important that everybody understands that these issues are not go, oh, well, hell, we'll just, there, that takes care of that.
Yeah,
I mean,
we have a philosophical
Yeah.
issue, definitely.
and I dare say that some of us are maybe more tend to say, you know, let private landowners make agreements as long as they don't hurt the county, you know, as far as decommissioning, or we stay out of it. Some of us favor that, some of us just don't wanna look out their door and see them. I mean, we got both folks here, right?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, sir.
At any rate, however you know, we'll survive either way. If you want the moratorium, 6 months, it kind of puts the weapon to the head and says we gotta get something figured out. But whatever we figure out doesn't mean that we can't change it in 6 months or whatever, okay?
Are there landowners that's gonna make mad at this point, do you know?
Well, I think we need to sometime in the 6 month period, make sure that we have
Right,
a hearing or at least an open discussion
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
those pro and against can come in and talk to us.
that always works out pretty
And
well.
we're not required to do that, but I think we should.
Okay.
And I can tell you, I've been to 2 counties, discussions, but the one in Vermillion, Illinois that I attended was more of a sales pitch and it really wasn't a conversation. And I don't think, to my knowledge, that there really was a conversation. And I'm concerned that some of the folks that signed up were not knowledgeable and everybody should be informed. Vermillion County, Indiana, which is zoned, did recently host a zoning hosted meeting. And it was very interesting, but it was a bit more of a forum. And I do agree, I think probably hearing our forum, whatever you wanna call that, would be good with some other legal entities speaking, not us necessarily, other than to introduce what's in it.
Okay. The other stuff is pretty perfunctory as far as the rest of the agenda, unless you see something there you wanna discuss. We need a quick, closed session, and then we'll move into, we've got another meeting, Carl and Andy and I have a meeting right after this, so. And a motion to go into exec session on contract negotiation.
Move.
Okay, Phil moves, Andy seconds, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
There's something else we put in close session.
What? Do we have, let's see. How about that? We have a situation where we need to add a thing to our closed session. So, Andy, would you withdraw your second?
yeah.
Your first or, okay.
Wherever you
We'll
want.
start all over. We want to have a closed session for contract negotiation and personnel.
Yes.
Phil moves, Andy seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. I'm not sure that's quite kosher, but I think that's fairly. Okay, we're back in closed session. Did you want to talk about,
No, I
open
just-
session?
No,
The committee is recommending it. And I guess they'll read it to make sure there's nothing, I haven't slipped in anything
Right.
there where
Or
I
somebody
wind up
didn't slip
with
anything in there.
That was,
of course, we depend on our attorney not to do that.
Right.
Motion.
Cats are doing well.
God bless.
real happy.
Motion to adjourn. Phil, Andy, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Take
We're
patients
adjourned.
to dialysis.